Daniel Suarez returning to Trackhouse for the 2025 season. So that's done and finished up. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good move for Trackhouse. He's definitely an average racer. He's not bad by any means. He's not like Corey LaJoy, so
He's definitely not.
he's
Nope.
definitely a little bit better than that. So I'm excited to have him back on the team. He got his one win this year, which is
Yep.
all that they ask of him to do.
And welcome back to another episode of your favorite Couch Potatoes, a special Redneck Boys edition. We are back finally after the long NASCAR break, and then we just decided to extend it another couple weeks, didn't we, bud? But we got plenty of racing to recap and power rankings and stuff. So let's get into it. But let's get into the news first. So the Clash is moving finally away from that small ass Coliseum to and even more, well, I guess it's the same size, but Bowman Gray Stadium in Winston-Salem, North Carolina next year. And I know we just looked at the pictures of this track before the podcast and stuff, and it looks a little ghetto,
Yeah.
if I'm going to say anything.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a slightly better high school stadium is what it looks like to me.
And I saw something that like NASCAR like Cup Series hasn't raced there in like 50 years or something. When I first saw pictures, it was like from the middle of one of the turns, and it looked like a literal circle. But it is a little more stretched out. But we'll see how it goes. I honestly think it'll be pretty similar racing. I think they're just kind of trying to bring back these old tracks like they did with North Wilkesboro for the All-Star race and stuff like that. But we'll have to see. I wish they would just go back to Daytona. That's when I think the Clash was a lot more fun.
Would that add 3 races at Daytona then? Because they start the season at Daytona and then
Yeah, that's how they did it. Yeah, they would just start the season, basically have 2 straight
races?
weeks in Florida, and in Daytona. So, but yeah, so we'll have to see how that goes. Let's keep moving along. I know you were excited to hear this. Daniel Suarez returning to Trackhouse for the 2025 season. So that's done and finished up. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good move for Trackhouse. He's definitely an average racer. He's not bad by any means. He's not like Corey LaJoy, so
He's definitely not.
He's
Nope.
definitely a little bit better than that. So I'm excited to have him back on the team. He got his one win this year, which is all that they ask of him to do. So,
and I feel like he's been steadily, at least slowly, kind of improving. And we'll talk about that in the Richmond race. But I feel like he's starting to get more towards the top 15 and less towards the top 20-ish range. He's creeping his way up and then having some strong runs. So I think it's a good move for Trackhouse too. And then one more extension we wanted to mention was Eric Jones. So he got a multi-year extension from Legacy Motor Club. And then I follow Jimmy Johnson on social media, the co-owner of that team, and he had like high praise to give for Eric Jones. He stated that his talent will be the key for turning that program around, and they're ready to give him the tools to win races and then eventually a championship. And I'm like, Jimmy, you of all people know how hard that is to do, and like you were the best at it. You know, you won 7 championships, and it doesn't just happen. And it's surprising to hear from Eric Jones, but hey, if he's got the confidence, maybe they just need a couple more years to get that program on its feet, because it is the first year when they're under Toyota and everything. Jimmy Johnson, I think, only his second year as an owner and stuff like that. So. But still, kind of surprising to hear that kind of confidence in Eric Jones.
But this is Eric Jones' first year as a full-time driver, no?
Oh, no. He's been there for a while, so he's actually got a ride with Joe Gibbs. He was in the 20 before Christopher Bell, and then he lost that ride to Christopher Bell, and I think that he just went straight to the 43 whenever that was just Richard Petty Racing, and then now it's Legacy Motor Club.
I thought because I swear I've seen Eric Jones in the Xfinity races. I thought he was full-time Xfinity a couple of years ago. But like I said, new NASCAR fan here, so. don't and I think it's Eric Jones I don't think is a bad driver. I mean by any means. I think he's definitely in that average middle group in the racing. You know who he is, right? It's not
Right.
like it's some random dude that always rides in the back of the track and stuff. So yeah, I mean maybe if Jimmy Johnson's giving him praise like that, then there must be something there.
Yeah.
So
Right. Something they believe in him. So yeah, we'll have to see if that turns into something real. But let's get into Richmond. Boy, oh boy. This race had NASCAR fans talking all over. I know I have definitely some opinions on it, but before we get there, let's start with stage one. Another stage one that we kind of always have. I feel like we say it every week. Not much happens. Everybody's kind of figuring out their car, figuring out the lines and stuff. The one thing that did really happen was Christopher Bell passed Denny Hamlin for the lead with about 45 laps in. And the Toyotas were very strong. Joe Gibbs, very strong. They ended up finishing 1, 2, 3 in stage one. And then the only other thing was in the stage one break during the pits, Bell ended up getting into Eric Jones, turned him completely around, and the pit crew ended up just doing the pit stop completely backwards for
really,
Eric Jones.
oh,
Yeah.
that's I think I've seen that. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I've seen that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, yeah, that was pretty weird to see.
Right. And I was like, I didn't know that would be like allowed, but I guess he ended up in the pit box, and that's all that really matters. You got to be inside those lines. So that was pretty crazy. But yeah, and then we get into stage two. And this was when I think we talked about it last podcast where they had the option tires for this race, similar to what we saw in the All Star race. And I remember, especially me, I feel like I know you kind of were like, but I feel like I had strong opinions on the tires didn't even do anything, at least in the All Star race. Like it didn't seem to matter at all. And I was kind of like, this is stupid. Not the case in this Richmond race. They very clearly got an advantage. And the two cars, so what happened was there's two sets of those option tires, and then I don't know, I think three or four of the regular tires that they had for the race. And Daniel Suarez and Michael McDowell were the first two cars to try out the option tires for this race. And it kind of made sense because I think McDowell ended up getting the lucky dog after stage one, and Suarez was kind of, I don't know, 15th, 17th or something like that. So they're both back in the pack. And I mean, it was like something out of a video game. They just shot
Suarez,
straight
yeah,
through the field.
Suarez and McDowell just shot through it like a rocket.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
very clearly had an advantage. You could tell. And yeah, Suarez ends up leading a lot of laps. That's what I was kind of talking about earlier. He ended up having a really strong race. And I think that it was about 50 laps or so that the tires started to give out. But a very strong run. And it seemed like everybody was kind of trying to save those option tires towards the end of the race. But once Suarez and McDowell did it, you got more and more people trying it out. So personally, even after just watching stage two, I was a big fan of these option tires.
yeah. No, I thought it was really cool how they worked, and it was um, having Daniel Suarez get to the front as fast as he did. I mean, I don't know if it's better for short track racing necessarily, because I think it's cool that they add in that and another strategic thing for the pits and stuff like that, the two different sets of tires and the strategy for the race and all that. Um, but I feel like it might be. I want to see how it's tested on a longer track. Maybe
Mile and a
in
half or something,
yeah,
maybe. Yeah.
maybe in Vegas, and kind of see, because I mean Vegas, very boring race. We see it in
Mm-hmm.
person every year.
Yep.
It's a boring race, and maybe that'll. I want to see how they work out a long track race and how long those tires last, and if somebody needs an advantage for 25 laps on a long track, then you throw those on and try to get up to the front. But we'll see what NASCAR does with it, because I don't know how NASCAR fans feel about it. Like all NASCAR fans, I
Yeah.
personally like the extra strategy with it though.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, especially tracks like that, like you're saying with Vegas, where a lot of times the racing just becomes kind of mundane and
Mm-hmm.
just in that, what every non NASCAR fan makes fun of NASCAR fans for, oh, they're just going in circles,
Mm-hmm.
turning left, and that at that point it kind of is, But
Yeah.
so I think that's a good point. But yeah, Suarez end up with all the strategy and anything. He's end up able to hold on to the stage 2 win. And then we go into stage 3, and that's where everybody else started to use their softer option tires, and then you saw Suarez kind of falling back pretty quickly. And then next thing that happened, good old Martin Truex, his luck continues. Has a mechanical failure, ends up in last place with the DNF. I mean, give this guy a trophy for fucking up in every kind of way and just having the worst luck, I guess.
I mean, and it's his retirement tour, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it just sucks that his last season's going out this way. You know what I mean?
Right.
Having a failure like that seems like almost every race now.
Yeah.
You know.
It's tough. I know I see all kinds of memes about it. That NASCAR memes page on Instagram always has some good stuff to say about Truex's luck. But a surprising thing in this race that we haven't really talked about, Austin Dillon. He had a really strong car. I believe he qualified 6th this race and was in the top 10 pretty much all day. And he ends up making a run for the lead and takes the lead and basically has the win in the bag before good old Recky Stenhouse does what Recky Stenhouse does. And I think they were on the tail end of the lead lap, and Ricky just got into the back of Ryan Preece, threw out a caution, and here we go. We got us another overtime finish. And so Austin starts on the inside, Joey Logano on the outside. And Logano has a really impressive, strong run from that outside, takes the lead, and has the race in the bag. And it kind of looked dire for Austin Dillon. Wow, you had your one win right there. You're getting into the playoffs. Your season is saved, and it would have been huge for RCR. Well, don't you worry, because he went into turn 3 and said, what was that one guy that said, I ain't lifting until I see God or the checkered flag?
Yeah.
He actually did that. And he was, I don't know, 3-4 car lengths back from Joey and just went straight into the turn and wrecked him. Clean wrecked him. I mean, I think there's a difference between bump and run and wrecking. And I think the problem is, like, he was a little too far back. Like, I'll even say, because I remember back when Carl Edwards was still running with Joe Gibbs and he was in the 19 car and he bumped Kyle Busch for the win. And I was all pissed about it, but it was a legit bump and run. He bumped him. He was right behind him. Kyle moved up the track, still was running, and Edwards won the race. But obviously, Logano wrecked out. And then before we even get to the finish line, folks, Denny Hamlin actually is able to pass Austin Dillon through the wreck. And there's a lot of controversy. Was Hamlin coming up? Was Austin coming down? Certainly looked like Austin was coming down, maybe a little bit Hamlin coming up, but also Rex Hamlin and gets the win at Richmond. Let's go. RCR in the win column, baby. Not the guy I wanted to be in the win column. But yeah. So before we get into the repercussions, what are your kind of thoughts on that final ending?
I don't know. I could see how both sides were trying to run it. You know what I mean? Austin Dillon trying to make it the playoffs. It's his only shot at making the playoffs is getting a win.
Yep.
You're in that position to try. In the position, you're coming up second, and you have a chance to win. Now, obviously, that chance was very far fetched, and that's why he did what he did. As much as I give shit to TJ about Logano, I mean that was I don't know if you could even call it poor racing either.
Yeah.
Just because it's a guy trying to go get his win, and but I mean, I've seen the interview of Logano after the race, and obviously he was heated, and 4 car lengths back to bump him like that. I mean, you gotta have some speed coming into that corner, and of course Logano goes down, and then with Denny Hamlin, I don't even know really what happened there. I think that Eric was just trying to hold. He was trying to hold it, I think, is what happened, and so he started drifting down the track. He's just carrying so much speed.
Yeah.
even after bumping Logano, that he had to try to turn down the track to not hit the wall. And
Hmm.
then Denny Hamlin was just running his line, I feel like, and their line coming out of turn 4 is coming back up the track to the wall.
Exactly. Hmm.
And I think it was just a combination of both those things, and yeah, sent Hamlin into the wall, and you can list off the repercussions now.
Yeah, I think that's like a great point. And two, I think to your like just to add on to what you're saying, about getting that chance to win. I think if you're Austin Dillon too, this is literally your only chance. Just
Yeah,
just by being the racer he is and how RCR has season has gone in general. Like you probably know going into Michigan that you're not going to win. You maybe Daytona, but it's always a wild card, and then Darlington probably not going to win either. So, but yeah, the repercussions. So on what Monday, he's in the playoffs. He's secured. He's got his win. He's good. And then I think it was like Tuesday after or something. NASCAR comes out and says, no, no, no. You can keep the win. You can keep the trophy. You can keep the money, but you're going to get 25 driver and owner points taken away, and then the playoff eligibility stripped from Austin Dillon. And I just have some opinions on this, and I really don't think it's like an RCR homer. I mean, you know me, you know that I'm not like a fan of Austin Dillon. I've been wanting to replace him, with give Kyle Busch a different teammate. So I don't think it's really that. I think it's kind of bullshit that they decided to do this. And I'll bring up an example but they say in the rules, they're like, it's in the rules. I can't remember what the language is, but like when you do something so
intentional.
outlandish or whatever like that and intentional, then that's against it. Okay. Remember, and you've talked about it before. Ross Chastain's wall ride, the famous wall ride in Martinsville, was against the rules in the time. They just remember the next year they're just like, well, okay, we're going to actually enforce it now. But my thing is, why are we picking and choosing? Either do the one thing or don't. So like if you're going to enforce the rules, then Ross should have had the same thing happen back in that day. And I'm not trying to it's not like shit talk. Like I don't think Ross deserved it. I thought it was badass, an all time NASCAR moment, and that's kind of what I thought. This instance was not quite as cool, and obviously not as much pressure, but I thought it was just another kind of classic thing. I mean, the video of Dale Earnhardt Sr. doing the same thing to Terry Labonte at Bristol in like '98 or something is a clip that gets played all the time, And like you said, it's going for the win. It's not like it's in the middle of a stage. And Joey Logano and Denny Hamlin also have their fair share of bumps and spins and wrecks to win races and stuff. So I honestly think that it was kind of a bullshit move. Now, on the other hand, I see because their point is we want to set a precedent now so that it doesn't continue to happen, so drivers don't continue to do stuff like that. So I can see that point, but honestly, I just hate the just kind of the flip flop. When are we actually going to decide to enforce rules in NASCAR, and when are we not?
See, and I'm going to come in as like a little bit of a devil's advocate here, because I mean, Logano and Denny, doing what, because I seen somebody post a video about it, about how Logano was crying and he's done this before and that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But at that same point, though, what Logano was doing, he was half a car length back, and when he would bump, it wasn't a bump to wreck the other car; it was just to push him out of the way. You know what I mean? When you're 4 car lengths back and carrying that much speed, you're wrecking that car.
Mm-hmm.
You're wrecking the car in front of you, because you give them that much of a shove, it's going to push them into the wall. And also with the spotter saying wreck him, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, that gets a little.
That's,
Yep,
you know what I mean? And
you
that's
have that evidence, and all that
that's
shit's recorded.
exactly. And so that's how I can see them taking those points, or taking the eligibility away.
Mm-hmm.
You bring up Ross Chastain and them not enforcing the rules with him. I get that. I understand. But Ross Chastain only was going to hurt himself by doing
Mm-hmm.
that. He wasn't wrecking another driver. You know what I mean? I mean, there's a chance that he could, and
Yeah.
obviously that's a really wild move. And like you said, NASCAR all time moment. stuff like that. But I mean, what Ross Chastain did was more intentional to himself,
Mm-hmm.
more than it was to shove somebody into the wall like he did. And I think that him picking up Denny Hamlin was just by chance.
Yeah,
But the Logano thing was definitely
definitely intentional. Yep.
intentional. So
Mhm.
that's where I could see them stripping the eligibility.
Yeah, and like I said, I see in the it's in the rule book, right? It's there, and I get that point. I think that's the thing. Even though like Ross was only endangering himself and stuff, now
Mm-hmm.
NASCAR's come out and being like, that's not okay. Like we can't can't let that happen again, basically. But they let it happen the one time, and I don't know. Like, I definitely know guys like Kyle Busch and Matt Kenseth would disagree with your statement on Joey intentionally wrecking or just bumping them. I know TJ loves to talk about the punch in Vegas that he saw, and but speaking of Joey, he didn't get off easy either. He got $50,000, a $50,000 fine for spinning his tires near the three's pit box and just charging down pit road, still in his car. I mean, I
Yeah,
don't know if you saw the in-car video, but
I
multiple
did.
people had to jump out of his way and stuff like that. And
I mean, it looked like he was trying to run over everybody in
it
pit
did.
row. Like he
And
was, and he every time he came close, he would rev the gas, get the hell out of my way, type of thing.
yep.
And it's like that's extremely unprofessional.
Oh yeah. And so dangerous, and definitely I think $50,000 is a good fine for him. But yeah, a wild, wild race with lots of, like you said, controversy and differing opinions even here. But yeah, Austin Dillon, he gets to keep the trophy, gets to keep the winnings, but gonna have to win another race if he wants to make it into the playoffs. But hopefully
That's
his
not happening
teammate, hopefully his teammate's the one
for
that
either.
is able to do that. But let's go on into our power rankings post Richmond, and we'll start with number 20, Austin Dillon, making it in for the first time this season, his season high, um, because of his win. And I think that I can understand that, and based off like our like standards, how we've been talking about how wins, I can understand him being at 20, at least for this moment. Now, I think guys like Hosevar, Todd Gilliland, Noah Gragson, those guys that have kind of been in that 20, Josh Berry even, might be, or I think are better drivers than Austin Dillon this season, but they don't got that win. Austin Dillon gets the win, so I'm not mad at NASCAR for this spot.
Yeah, and I mean Austin Dillon, the one race, obviously running really well all race, and it's not like it was some sort of fluke.
Right.
I would say necessarily win, even with what happened at the end of the race, and so he did get the win. That's it's big on NASCAR scale. It's big on our scale. The thing with NASCAR is that it doesn't stay on their scale all year.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I think Austin Dillon, I think there's other cars that have been more consistent than Austin Dillon, but obviously he does have the win, so 20's a good spot for him.
Yep, I'd have to agree. Let's go on up to 18, the number I wish he was still in. Kyle Busch. He moves up 2 spots, and I think can kind of understand this because he had a decent week. I think he finished 12th, so it wasn't anything crazy, but he didn't do anything stupid and get himself wrecked. His crew didn't do anything stupid, so I know that Austin Dillon has that win, and we usually, go with the wins above, but I think that you can definitely say that Kyle Busch has been better than Austin Dillon. And that's not saying much, but
Yeah, but I mean, you could also say that Kyle Busch has been doing the same thing that um, like the guys you just named, Osavar, they've just been. I
Mhm.
mean, Kyle Busch has obviously been running a little better than them, but they've also been very consistent with that 18 to 20 range, and
Yeah.
Kyle Busch did finally not have a couple of weeks where he didn't try to wreck himself out for a win and stuff like that. And so yeah, maybe it's fine that he's at 18. I definitely think his name holds a little value with where they
Hmm.
keep placing him. So
That makes sense. Well, let's go up to 16, a guy that drops 1 spot, Joey Logano. And I don't know, because I think this is too low, and I hate to defend and talk good on Joey Logano, but he was literally one turn away from being a real two-time winner this season. And if he has 2 wins, we're singing a whole different song about Joey Logano. We're probably top 10 with Joey Logano. So I don't know that 16, especially a couple of the guys that are above him, is fair for that spot.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'd say I definitely would probably put. I mean, he had the win, right?
Mm-hmm.
He had it,
Yeah. Yep.
and Austin Dillon, 4 car lengths back, came and shoved him into the wall. So I mean, it's just I could see Joey being a lot higher than this, and I would probably put him a little higher than this if I made my own.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, I think he deserves to be a little higher than 16.
I would agree. Let's go to 15, which is your Trackhouse teammate Daniel Suarez, moving up in the world. He's been one of those guys. I think 17 or 18 almost every week, and it's kind of because of that win. But like I said, he's been kind of on a uptick. He's been putting out stronger performances. Led 93 laps at Richmond, which was a career high for him. And then he also has 3 top 11 finishes in the past 4 races. So I like this spot. I like him moving up a little bit in the power rankings.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously had a good car these last few races, and he's got the 1 win, so I think it's a good spot for him. I don't know necessarily if I would put him over Joey,
Yeah.
but I maybe somewhere behind 17 to 20. I think is where he should stay. You know,
Yeah.
he's had a few good races and 1 win. That's basically it.
Well, let's stick in Team Trackhouse and go up to number 12, Ross Chastain, who moves up 2 spots. Finally got a top 5 finish and, had a decent race, but he still ended up dropping in the points, which I know we're going to talk about a little bit later. But yeah, number 12. It's about the same thing I feel like we've been saying about Ross all season, right? That's where he finishes most of the time, and these top 5 seem to be very rare. So I kind of like the spot there for him. I think I would even put Logano above him, especially like if we were going to say Logano had that win. You definitely, I think, would say that Logano would be above Ross.
Yeah, but I mean, you could also put Truex in the same category with Ross because
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they both have had unfortunate events happen when they're supposed to be able to win the race or be in position to win a race. They both had some pretty unfortunate things happen, and I will get into it a little later, but another one happened to Ross. I mean, it wasn't in the thing to win the race, but definitely could have finished top 5. So, but yeah, I think, on average, that's where he sits. So I don't see anything wrong with that. I mean, I know I do say that I hold wins very highly, and Joey does have a win, but I do feel like Ross has been, up there kind of finishing maybe a little better than Joey all season. So maybe could bump Ross back to 14.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I could definitely see that. I think Joey's been a little bit stronger as of late, but I think overall in this season, Ross has been more consistent
Yeah.
than Joey. Joey's been more up and down. Moving on to number 11, Bubba Wallace, up 2 spots as well. And he got a top 5 again, showing some strong cars, and yeah, tied his career high in top 5. So he's up to 11. I think that's I think that's fair. Now, him and Ross are in that points battle, so I can see them being, close in the power rankings. That makes sense to me. So I don't mind the spot here.
Yeah, and I mean, I think NASCAR is just going to switch them back and forth with whoever's leading in the points. So.
Right. That's a good
Because
point.
that's basically what it's going to be, right? I mean, whoever has a better race that week is going to be higher in the points, and I think that's just what's going to happen until
Yeah.
either one of them wins or the season ends.
Right. That's a great way to put it. Well, let's get into the top 10. Alex Bowman sticking at that 10th spot, I think, because of that win. I wonder, I know he had that strong few stretches, but I feel like he's kind of fading back into his normal Alex Bowman type races. I mean, I don't even remember where he finished here, and I don't remember where I haven't really seen him since, that. I think he had one good race at Pocono after his win, and then that was pretty much it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to talk about Bowman right now.
I can understand that. I'm trying to look. I can't even. Oh yeah, 28th. He finished 28th at Richmond. So I maybe I would drop him down a little bit. I'm not sure, but let's go on to number 9. The guy you were talking about, Martin Truex. Maybe a little too high in my book. Like you said, he's just been kind of in that position where he has competed, and he's been up there competing for wins or strong finishes, but has just not had the luck on his side, whether it be his fault or a mechanical thing or whatever it is. He's just been slowing. He's been slowing down, and yeah, like you said, that retirement tour is not going well for him.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, I think Truex and Ross could be in the same conversation, but I do think that Truex has had a better car all year. Don't get me wrong there. I mean, he's had a lot more chances at a top 5 finish. He's had a couple more chances than Ross at winning a race, and so I mean, literally Sonoma just runs out of gas right before the finish line.
Yep.
So that's that. I mean, that's just the worst luck you could have, honestly. So. Yeah, I think I would move Truex back out of the top 10 for sure.
Yeah. And then going up to number 8, Brad Keselowski, he moves up one spot, and I think it's just kind of he's been a little bit more consistent than Martin Truex has. I know he hasn't done much. I know he's ran in the top. He had some strong races here and there, but I don't think he's been like close to getting a win lately. But I think I would understand him being above Truex.
And he does have one win.
And
So
yeah, he's got the win for sure. Yeah.
so I mean, you could almost, in all honesty, you could probably put Brad and Joey in the same category too.
Right.
You know what I mean? They both have the one win. Brad had a really strong stint in the middle of the season, and Joey's been fluctuating back and forth on if he wants to be good or not this season. So
It's a great point.
I think you could definitely put both of TJ's drivers in the same category.
That's weird. That's so weird. We gravitated towards the same exact. No. Let's continue on. Let's go to number 7. It's insert again for like the 5th time. William Byron, number 7. He does have just 2 top 10s since mid-June. He's definitely had more. He's been more on the struggle bus as of late. I know he's been involved in some wrecks and some not really good races, but still, same thing. He's got 3 wins, and he's been up there too. So I think it's still a little too low in general for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still too low. He's got all the wins. You know what I mean? Still too low for him. I know it's been a strong end to his season, or it's not a strong end, but really low end to his season. And so I think it's been tough for Byron. I mean, we'll get into the last race that was this Monday.
Yep.
A little later, but he did finish somewhat strong there. So,
right.
I think they just keep disrespecting these top drivers every week.
And speaking of number 6, Christopher Bell, another 3-time winner who's I think been a little more strong as of late. And he got a 6th place finish at Richmond, a stage win, showed very good strength. So I would think that would get him a little bit more love in the rankings. But yeah, Christopher Bell at 6.
Yeah, and I mean this top 7. I mean, we say the same things every week about these drivers,
pretty much.
And so it's just quick recap over those. But yeah, I think Bell is definitely better than the next 2 drivers we're going to talk about. I think Byron's better than the next 2 drivers we're going to talk about as well. So.
Yeah, and the next 2 would be Ryan Blaney at number 5, which I think might be kind of a fair spot for him, but because he has been strong. He's got 2 wins. He did have his 4-race top 10 streak broken with an 11th at Richmond. So I think he's definitely showing the consistency. I like him at 5, but I think I would put Bell above him. Now I would maybe move another driver that's above him behind him, but we'll get to that later. But yeah, Ryan Blaney at 5.
Yeah, I mean, not much to say. Like I said, I'd still put the two guys behind him over him. I
Yeah.
mean, he has had a strong season, I think, but just the other two have had stronger. So,
And then number 4, who did drop down one spot, but it's only because the guy above him was dropped down too low because that's what NASCAR does.
hmm
Chase Elliott, number 4. I know he had those. We listed off the stats last time and how he had that top 20 streak and then it was broken and stuff like that. He's had strong runs, but strong runs are, they don't show up in the record books like wins do, like we've talked about. So
hmm
don't understand. You mentioned, your name carrying you with Kyle Busch. Maybe it's just doing the same thing with Chase Elliott.
well, and I think so too. Plus, he's a fan favorite driver,
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, I mean, he still is way too high. I'd put Ryan Blaney above him. You know, basically everything you said. I don't see
Yeah.
why. I don't see why Denny fell so far back.
I, I swear, I remember they did that when he had it was like he had an engine failure in like the first few laps at Sonoma, and then I can't remember the most recent thing that happened, but it was kind of unlucky, and they're penalizing him for it, even though he's been clearly showing how strong he's been. And yeah, Denny Hamlin at number 3, moving up 2 spots from the previous week. No sense made there. And yeah, like we're talking about, I think we've always had Denny Hamlin in pretty much the top 2 with the two of us, if
Yeah.
not the top 3. So, and then his Toyota, his employee, I guess, Tyler Reddick is one spot above him at number 2, and he's continuing a strong run. He hasn't been getting those wins, but he's definitely always in the top 10, usually in the top 5. So I'm not really too mad about the position because I think he's strong. And like I've talked about, I've said it before, he's been in position here. He very well could have 3 wins, but he doesn't. So I might not put him this high, but I sort of understand why NASCAR is, I guess, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, he has had a strong car lately, but I'm just going to keep repeating myself. There's drivers that have more wins than Tyler Reddick does, and wins count towards everything in NASCAR now, especially with the playoffs and
Yep.
playoff points and stuff like that. So, I wouldn't put him at 2 at the least.
Right.
I'd at least put Denny Hamlin above him.
Yeah.
So,
Well, speaking of wins, nobody has more than this guy this season, and no surprise, Kyle Larson is at number 1, which makes sense. Don't need to say much about that either, because yeah, he's just been the best in the business this season for sure.
yeah, NASCAR's golden boy.
Yep, there you go. All right, so I'll give you mine. So my top 3, I believe, actually, a lot of them are staying the same. Kyle Larson number 1, Denny Hamlin number 2. I'm going to put Bell number 3, and Tyler Reddick I'm going to have at 4, and then I'm going to put Blaney at 5, who I'll say over Byron. And I think we had this because I kept them in the same spot.
Mm-hmm.
I just think Blaney's been a little bit stronger than Byron, and he has one less win. I do understand that, but I'm going to give that there. So yeah, not much changed for me in those top spots. Do you have anything to say about it this week?
No, I mean, just the same thing. I mean, I understand why you could put Ryan Blaney at 5, but I'm the wins guy.
Yep.
So,
All right. Well, we'll keep going on. So Chase Elliott, I'm going to keep it 7, which I think is just, it makes more sense. It's more fair to have him at that spot. Everybody above him is a multiple time winner. Now,
mhm.
everybody below him is either a one time or no time winner. So, like, I can understand him being the top of that group with his consistent finishes and stuff. But, for NASCAR, come on. I know he's a fan favorite, but please, please. All right. And then Brad Keselowski, I'm going to have at 8, Bowman at 9. And then I'm going to slip Truex down 2 spots from my last rankings and have him at 10.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have no problem with that. I mean, still think Byron should be in the top 5, and maybe Bowman can slip out of the top 10. Definitely push Truex back to 10 makes sense. So,
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna go up 5 spots from NASCAR on Joey Logano. I'm gonna put him at number 11. I think, especially, obviously, he's got the win, and like I said, he could very well have 2 wins. And we're talking about him. I mean, based on like your logic, our logic, that's at least the seventh, best driver, right? Because he's got 2 wins and everything. And
Yeah.
I think you're definitely putting him in the top 10. So I'm gonna at least give him 11. And it's because I think the guys behind him were they might have had more consistency, haven't had as much strength in these races, and that would be Bubba Wallace. I'm going to have at 12, Ross at 13, Chris Buescher at 14, and Ty Gibbs at 15.
No, I have nothing to argue against this. I mean, you could definitely put Joey above, I think, Truex and Bowman, just because he has the 2 wins. I know that Joey's had the up and down season, but he does have the 2 wins over the guys. One guy that's just been unlucky, and the other hasn't really been in the spot to win a race. So
Right.
I could definitely put Joey up to 9. But other than that, I think everything kind of stays the same. Bubba Wallace kind of coming out of nowhere for at the end of this, but
Taking your guys' points away.
yeah,
All right, finishing out the top 20. I'm gonna go Daniel Suarez at 16, Chase Briscoe at 17, and then I'm gonna go Austin Cindric at 18, Todd Gilliland at 19, and then Kyle Busch at 20.
yeah. No, I mean, I think I mean, there's not much to say about the last 5. I mean, they've all just kind of been switching around at that point. So
Right. And I would put Austin Dillon in here, but like I talked about earlier, I think Kyle Busch has been better. I know he got that win, but I also think that some of these other guys have definitely been stronger than Austin Dillon. And hey, he got his NASCAR took it away, so I guess does it even really count? So, but yeah. So, anyways, let's get into Michigan because that race, like you said, just ended up finishing this morning after yet another rain delay, and we saw this one coming. I was so excited. I went to a bar to watch it, and soon got there right at the time, and they pulled the cars out for like 2 warm-up laps and pulled them right back down. And then so the whole time I'm at the bar, eating food and stuff like that, eating my meal, they're just sitting there in a rain delay interviewing drivers. And then get home, they start the race. I kind of missed most of stage 1. And then they got just barely into stage 2 before they ended up canceling it for the day, starting up again this morning. I kind of saw that writing on the wall. I mean, you could see the rain was just all the way there at Michigan. Qualifying was canceled. It was just rainy the whole weekend. Not sure why God wants to put the sunny days on Mondays, it seems like. And then why can't we just flip them? But let's get into it. So, like I said, qualifying was canceled. So Denny Hamlin ended up starting on the pole due to the rule book. And then they go around into turn 3. And we saw this a lot where when 2 cars get stacked up or together or side by side drafting each other, it takes so much off their run. And if there's a guy close enough behind him, he can take advantage of that. And that's exactly what Kyle Larson did. So on lap 1, you get a 3-wide pass for the lead going into turn 3. Pretty impressive to see that move so early in the race.
yeah, no, and I thought it was a pretty crazy move, definitely. And not much to really say because, like you said already, that side draft definitely takes away from your run, and especially with these new cars. And so and guys can skyrocket past you if they've got that run coming into the beginning of the turns.
They sure can, because the next thing we're going to talk about is Bubba Wallace doing the exact same thing just a few laps later. So Denny Hamlin ended up running Kyle Larson back down, but in the battle that they were having, slowed them down enough that Bubba did the exact same thing and charged towards the front. And then once they get kind of sorted out, Denny Hamlin is also trying to make his run back to the lead. And coming out of turn 4, he was carrying just a little bit too much speed, maybe more speed than he thought he was, and actually kind of makes an impressive save and kind of forces himself to spin out, but kept himself off the wall and out of real trouble. So he just, I hadn't really kind of seen a move like that, especially from a veteran guy Just kind of missing. I've done that in NASCAR Heat 5 or whatever it is. Where like, fuck, I fucked up the corner, but usually I just hit the wall. But yeah, and then another thing that all like we always say, NASCAR fans are happy to see. You could hear the crowd, the entire crowd, just cheering their asses off after Denny Hamlin spun. So that was kind of funny to see.
Yeah, it's different being on the other side of that, isn't that, Kyle?
It sure is. It sure is. But yeah, and then strategy kind of changes things after that caution, and Ryan Blaney's able to sneak in a stage 1 win before we get on a rain delay. And then, like I said, we start back up on Monday morning with stage 2, and Chase Elliott and Kyle Busch, they start up front, and it's one of the coolest things I've seen all season. Kyle Busch made a pass for the lead all on his own. It wasn't strategy. It wasn't anything. And then he led for like 7 or 8 laps, and then Chase Elliott passed him back. And then he kind of quickly fell back to 5th, but was still running up there towards the top. And then about 10 to go, we had a phantom tire. What I don't know what you call it, just carnage, I guess. Todd Gilliland, AJ Allmendinger, and Joey Logano all lose their tires within 1 or 2 laps of each other. And I think the rubber fully came off and ended up causing a caution with about 10 to go in stage 2.
Well, and I think the weird thing about Joey's is that he was just barely coming off pit row.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, he was just barely coming off pit row, and that back right tire, I mean, it looked like a full tire rolling down the track, but it was just the rubber.
Yeah. That was definitely weird, but that set up another strategy moment where a bunch of drivers stay out, including both of our boys who start on the front row after this caution. And Ross Chastain, I think he was in first, so he got the outside, and then Kyle Busch got the inside. And this starts a trend that I noticed, and I don't know, like in watching the race, listening to the commentary, everybody's just like, every leader's gonna pick the outside. And I'm sitting there every time it happened. Why? Because Kyle Busch is able to take the lead from Ross Chastain, makes a really strong run, and is able to slide up in front of him and take the lead. And I'll get into the rest of them later, but it kind of starts a trend that way. But before we get there, a lot of big hitters get taken out in a caution where Kyle Larson, things are just getting stacked up. Like I said, you have the different strategy, people on new tires, old tires, and things stacked up. Kyle Larson got loose on his own and ended up spinning out and taking out a lot of big hitters. So himself, Christopher Bell, 2 of my picks for this week's race, which that made me so happy to see. But then for you, a couple of guys that you're in that points battle with, Chris Buescher and Bubba Wallace, they weren't wrecked out of the race, but it definitely affected them. They sustained some damage. So, and then that definitely, helps out your boy Ross Chastain. So I know you were happy to see that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and Bubba Wallace, I think, is the guy that I'm most worried about.
Mm-hmm.
Especially after they stripped Austin Dillon's win. So it's kind of back to how it was, where Chris Buescher was a little bit higher than everybody else. And it was still going to be hard to catch him. But it was really just between that and for that 16th spot for Bubba Wallace and Ross Chastain. So it was a little sigh of relief seeing, and I hate to say it because you never want to see drivers wreck, but
right,
but it's nice seeing that guy that you're competing with not be able to compete, right? Especially when he had a really strong car that race.
Yep, and has had a strong run. That top 5. I know they both got a top 5, but Bubba got the top 5 too at Richmond, and yeah, it definitely the shit happens, but. What also helped out was Ross Chastain picking up 9 stage points in that stage, finishing second. And then the words you've all been waiting for me to say, Kyle Busch wins. Stage 2.
We've been
stage
waiting
2.
For that.
Just stage 2. But it was definitely cool to see.
Puts him 100 points behind.
Yeah. But to have a strong race and to have a strong car and good strategy, it kind of all gets put together. But let's get into stage 3. And like I said, leader chooses the outside line. Again, what happens? William Byron passes him. and takes the lead. And I'm sitting here, why do we keep doing that? Because it seems that now I know that the outside line is preferred in that track, but I feel like with the side draft, you can use that side draft and the angle so you can shortcut the turns and able to pull in front of them. And that's what I saw almost every time on those restarts.
Yeah, and I mean it's you don't have to carry. You can push it further into the turn. I feel like,
Hmm.
um, coming through that first lap, and so you being able to push it and not being able having to carry the pace through the turn, um, definitely helps out with that. So
Yeah,
I don't see why a leader, because I mean on most tracks the leaders usually choose the inside.
right.
So it's just weird that the strategy of this race for every driver, not just Ross, to choose the outside lane.
Yeah. Kyle Busch did it too, and I was like hoping that he would go at the inside. I'm like, I just watched you make it work on the inside. Why wouldn't you not, just go back to that? But moving on, your weekly installment of Corey LaJoy being a bad driver. And I'm glad he's okay. I'll say this in all seriousness. I'm glad he's okay, but he made a really just stupid
I
aggressive
just
move.
I don't
And
understand. Like I don't
it
understand why he did that
was
because I mean he
completely
had the whole
unnecessary.
track. He had the
Yeah.
whole track to make the pass.
Yep.
He had a run. He
Hmm.
definitely had a run and had the whole track to make the pass on the backstretch,
Yep.
and somehow still clips. Who was it?
Noah Gragson.
Gragson.
Yeah.
He still clipped him. I don't
Takes the
understand.
air out from him and then flips himself over.
Which you don't
Completely
see anymore.
airbound. No, you do
You
not.
don't see that. I mean, like the commentator said on the race, they've
Hmm.
spent millions of dollars, millions of hours in
Yeah.
trying to make those cars so they don't do that, and
Right.
somehow Corey LaJoy made it
Boy
happen.
found a way to do it. Man's got talent. The right kind of talent? No, but he's got some sort of talent, definitely. But yeah, so he ends up wrecking himself. William Byron, so resetting it, William Byron had the lead, right? Chooses the outside lane. Chase Elliott passes him on the inside again. So just more and more of the same. Um, and then just moving forward, after we have some green flag pit stops, Kyle Busch ended up going long on his tires, trying to use that strategy. Now we all know a lot of guys, whenever that first car comes into pit, then you'll see everybody else, right? Because you don't want to lose all that time on the
Yep.
track. But Kyle, it was actually kind of perfect the way he and the 8 team pulled this off because they ended up just taking 2 tires to save that time, running it just long enough that he's able to actually keep the lead after running a bunch more laps than the other guys. And he's able to get out in front of Byron and on a little bit fresher tires on those right sides, but ended up not being quite enough just on those 2 tires because Byron is able to make it past Kyle. And then Tyler Reddick is able to, I feel like he kind of came out of nowhere and definitely looked like he was the car to beat. Like you could just see it on the track that he had more strength than everybody. And he ends up taking the lead from Byron with about 25 to go. Byron didn't end up getting Kyle until after Reddick got Byron, and then Reddick got Kyle Busch with about 25 to go.
Yeah, and I mean that Kyle Busch, the strategy coming out of pit row there was pretty cool to see. I mean, obviously it didn't work out in the end, but just being able to stay on the lead lap and hold the lead like that after going into pit
Yeah.
and being later than everybody else coming into pit, um, so
Yeah.
it was a cool thing to see. I mean, and then the way, like I said earlier, with being able to carry the speed into the turn because you're not on pace. Um, going coming down. I mean, because Kyle Busch was able to just hold the gas through that turn
Yeah.
and
Yep.
hold the lead because everybody else had to slow down to hit that turn because they were on pace. So
Right. Yeah, it ended up. I would say yeah, ended up working out. I know he got passed, but honestly, he was able to maintain a strong enough run, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But we got a kind of a controversial caution that came out with 5 to go because it was for Martin Truex, who again more bad luck. But he kind of got a little loose, hit the wall, but maintained speed. And we were talking about it last time with that Indy, with that caution that they were waiting to throw. This one, boom, hits the wall. Okay, caution. Let's set up a overtime finish. Is what a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people are saying. It's kind of a little controversy there. What do you think about NASCAR throwing that?
Well, I mean, I think the what I kind of saw from it was, I mean, Truex obviously hit the wall, but then he was extremely slow. It seemed like he got back up to speed by turn two, but I mean, being that slow can definitely cause problems, and
Hmm.
so I can see why they would throw it. But then they also, I don't know, NASCAR does some weird shit sometimes, and like you were saying earlier, with what rules they want to go with or
Right.
what, you know what I
Yep.
mean? So they wanted to see an overtime finish there, so they got their overtime finish.
There we go. Exactly. And so Tyler Reddick had the lead, like I said, and then going into. Oh no! So this was before. Sorry, I'm trying to remember. Oh, that's right. This wasn't. Yeah, it was for an overtime finish. It was just basically with two to go. That's what confused me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then so Tyler Reddick chose the outside lane, and Byron ends up passing him. So weird. And then in the green white checkered finish, that's when unfortunately Ross Chastain gets the short end of the stick after either boy, like you said, you didn't want to talk about him. Bowman checks up, stacks up the field, and Ross ends up being the one that spins out there.
Yeah, and I mean that's what sucks is because you know, he had a chance for a top five finish, and he needed those points,
Yep.
and it wasn't him trying to be aggressive, right, and being
No,
stupid
no,
and
that
trying,
this wasn't at all. Yeah.
you know what I mean? It was just by luck. Bowman somehow starts to try to spin out on the straight, too. By the way,
Yep.
not even in a turn did he do this. He did it
Mm-mm.
on the straight.
Yep.
So it's like, and then he just wiggles a little bit, touches the wall, and then everybody starts swerving. And Ross is
Yeah.
the one that just barely he got lifted or lost some air underneath him and just maybe wiggled a little too much, and he's the one that got hung out to dry there. So just annoying. It's
Yeah.
good. That's been his whole season, I feel like.
Yep. Whenever it's not his fault, then something like that kind of happens. But that's what ends up sending up the overtime finish, in which I say it again, Byron chose the outside lane, and he did not win the race with that choice. No, Tyler Reddick on the inside is able to make the pass. So I think that makes it 0 for 4 or 0 for
Mm-hmm.
5 on the
Mm-hmm.
last restarts of the race. And I'll just say it. Maybe we should choose the inside leaders. Maybe we should, and especially if you get to choose, when you get going and stuff too. Like I think it would be even more of an advantage. But yes, Tyler Reddick ended up saving my ass, which I'll know you'll get to in just a second. And ends up winning the race, getting his second win of the year. And then the top five finishers, we got Byron finishing second, Ty Gibbs third, and Kyle Busch getting an actual top five. Put the race together, strategy, strength. I think this was maybe his best race of the year besides Atlanta, I guess. And gets the top five, and then Brad Keselowski rounds it out with fifth.
You just had to throw in the top five finishers, didn't
I'm
you?
happy about it, man. It's like this is the best. Like I said, the best thing he's done all year. That's all. That's all it is. At least for
They
me.
literally never go over the top five finishers. Kyle Busch finished the top five. And here's the top five finishers.
I've done it in the past. I know. Maybe not every time, but definitely had to this time.
Well, like you were saying, Tyler Reddick saved your ass.
Sir.
We're getting into our pick'em standings here. So, Kyle, winner of the race, obviously, with Tyler Reddick, but you did have Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell. Didn't matter in the end, obviously.
Yep.
And then I had Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex, and Chase Elliott. Denny Hamlin wrecks out. Martin Truex hits the wall at the end of the race. And Chase Elliott, for some reason, at the end of the race, kind of slowed down.
Oh my gosh, yeah, we didn't even talk about
Yeah.
that. He got into Blaney, which ends up saving your ass because Blaney I wouldn't call it a wreck, but they got shoved back. into traffic.
Yeah, then for some reason they start to fall way behind, and then TJ had Ryan Blaney, Brad Keselowski, and Joey Logano. Not surprised in those picks there,
No.
but hasn't helped them all season. But
Well,
so,
it'll pay off eventually, right? You gotta you stick with the strategy.
but anyways, our pick'em standings are Kyle with 37 points, me with 35 points, and TJ with 27. So
Just as he was getting closer, like I think that's what he said last year. And now here we go. But here we go with me and you just swapping the lead, swapping being tied. So we'll have to see what happens going into Daytona. It's always gonna be a hard race to pick for. So we'll definitely have to see how that is. And you know what's not fun going into Daytona with? A 1 point lead
yeah,
above the cut line.
mm-hmm. Yep, and it's I I don't know, man. You never want to be in this position at the end of the season. This is, I mean, with Daytona being in such a wild card race,
Yep.
anything could happen, and you just never want to come into it this way. So, I mean, obviously, we'll go through them. We'll just name them off really fast. The standings, real quick. Got Kyle Larson 1, Denny Hamlin 2, Byron 3, Christopher Bell 4, and Tyler Reddick 5 to round out your top 5. You got Ryan Blaney 6, Chase Elliott 7, Brad Keselowski 8, Alex Bowman 9, Joey Logano 10, Daniel Suarez 11, Austin Cedric 12, Martin Truex Jr. 13, Ty Gibbs at 14, Chris Buescher at 15, and Ross Chastain at 16, sitting 1 point above Bubba Wallace. Now, obviously, the 3 cars that are fighting for that, to stay in are Chris Buescher, Ross Chastain, and Bubba Wallace. Ross Chastain is only 20 points behind Chris Buescher, so there still is a chance that Chris Buescher can fall out of the playoffs. Not super likely, because I feel like Chris Buescher can get in the top 15, top 10 to solidify himself there. But yeah, it's just, you never want to see yourself in this position, and this is the second year in a row that Bubba's been in this position, and so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's definitely stressful. And then the problem is you feel like you almost want to, you maybe have to, not necessarily, but catch Chris Buescher and not be the guy that's in 16, even if you are, because Daytona wild card, like we said, can still have a winner from the bottom that bumps that line back down. So, and hopefully that guy's driving the number 8, who's only 93 points back now. So watch out now.
Ouch. I'm
All
so
righty,
scared.
well, yeah. Hey, Daytona, man, that's probably our best chance. So I'm definitely excited to watch that this Saturday on NBC. I think it's at 5:30 local time for us here in Utah. So we'll definitely make our picks for that. Keep you guys updated, and make sure to stay tuned to the socials on Instagram, YouTube Shorts, and TikTok. We post them there, and then give us likes, comments, follows, and then our episodes drop in. We'll have this episode drop in just before the race at Daytona on Saturday. So be sure to check that out on YouTube and Spotify, and then we will catch you next time on the couch. So see you guys.